Welcome back to Footballology. So I'm pretty sure you guys have heard, and much as the whole NFL world is heard by now, is that Leonard Fournette got released by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so this morning when I was at work, I'm scrolling through my phone and I get a notification that saying Leonard Fournette is expected to be released by the Jaguars. And I was just like, no way in hell. Like it blew my mind. I got on Twitter. I literally looked at every source I could possibly come across, and every source was saying that Leonard Fournette got released. And so the first question I asked myself was why did they do it? And it kind of threw me off because I wasn't expecting them to do it. I thought that they were pretty much done for the most part cleaning house, especially once they traded Unique and Ndakwe over to the Minnesota Vikings. I was like, oh, okay, they're done. Like there's no one else they got to really clean house for. And I really honestly forgot about Leonard Fournette and some of the ups and downs that he's had with the franchise and the organization overall, and just some of the issues he's had on the field and even staying on the field. And so I really forgot all about that. And so the first thing I asked myself was, why did they release him? And I'm like, that makes no sense. And then, you start to really think about it, and I start reading some people's comments and things. I was like, oh, well, that makes sense now. Like, it actually starts to kind of like add up after a while that they're really trying to push out this old regime's players, I guess you could say, for the most part. And as you guys know, here on Footballology, the one thing we like to talk about is rebuilds, or I guess retooling or remodeling, however you want to look at it. But I wouldn't call what Jacksonville is doing currently a rebuild quite that much, because I feel like they still have a lot of keystone or cornerstone pieces in place, that guys that can still be building blocks for this team moving forward. And obviously if these guys wasn't building blocks, they would have gotten rid of them already. So that was one thing that kind of intrigued me the most part. Like, I had to talk about it from that perspective. Like, it sucks that Leonard Fournette got released. Hopefully that he does find another team, and another team that knows how to utilize him and really gives him the opportunity to be the feature back that I'm pretty sure, like, Leonard Fournette is like not really I wouldn't say a hybrid, but he's definitely more old school running back than he is new school running back. And I feel like that hopefully you get a team that just want to be a downhill running team, some more like Tennessee is, downhill running team, a team that's just going to pound, and give their running back 25 plus carries, 35 plus or 30 plus carries. Like, that's where Leonard Fournette needs to be. But at the same time, Leonard Fournette really can't stay on the field that long, so it's like that's kind of like a up and down thing. So, but like, I want to talk for really what I want to talk about was everything from the Jacksonville Jaguars standpoint of things. So the first thing that I do every time I do a lot of my videos is I always go over to the team's roster, and I like to look at the roster. So with the Fournette release, I want to see what the Jaguars had currently on their roster. I already knew about Armstead, so Armstead was already out there. I tell a lot of people, I'm like, hey, Armstead's going to be the feature guy. At least in my opinion, I feel like that's who it's going to be. And even all the fantasy apps, and everyone's coming out saying Armstead. And so I was like, that's cool. And then I seen a couple of people commenting about Chris Thompson. And then I was like, what, Chris Thompson? So when I got to the roster, I looked, and there he is, Chris Thompson. And I was just thinking to myself, like, well, Chris Thompson would be nice, don't get me wrong, but then does he have an actual role on this team? Yes and no. I think when he was with the Washington football team, he actually had a little bit of role, but it seemed like he couldn't stay on the field. And when he was on the field, don't get me wrong, he was a very dynamic player and he did a lot for the football team, but I didn't feel like that he was that guy. I never felt like he was going to be that guy. So for me personally, Armstead was always the way to go. And I seen Thompson, and then I go and I see they got a couple other running backs on the list, and I'm like, none of these guys truly stand out to me. I even went back and checked out some of these guys, if I could find anything on combine wise, college wise, what they did, stat numbers and everything. And so none of these guys really pop off the screen, right? So it's like Armstead is probably going to be the way we go. And so what I really want to talk about though was the overall Jacksonville roster though. So now when we go down the roster, the first thing I noticed was their offensive line, or not even noticed on the roster when I got here, but just in the back of my head, I knew their offensive line was something that they was always focusing on going through, I would say, the last 3 seasons or so, bringing in, having guys like AJ Cann on the roster, Andrew Noel, getting Jawan Taylor, getting Cam Robinson. So the offensive line has always been their focal point of what they were trying to do in Jacksonville. And I don't think that's ever going to change. I don't think it ever will change. And even looking at what they currently have on their roster, I feel comfortable going with the starting 5 that they possibly are going to go with come week 1. So the starting 5 up front, and I'm a big starting 5 guy. I'm always about offensive line. I feel really comfortable and confident with what they have up front on the starting 5. And so then we move to the quarterback position. We know we got Gardner Minshew there. Hopefully that he's not going to look as quality as he did last year because he's obviously going into year 2. And, you know, once the NFL gets tape on you, they're going to show you what they're about. And then it's hopefully up to you to kind of counteract that and to see if you're that good of a quarterback or that great of a quarterback. So hopefully Gardner Minshew just can come back and do some of the things he did last year. And then you scroll down a little bit ways and you take a look at the tight ends. Obviously bringing in Tyler Eifert was a big deal. I think Tyler Eifert, if staying healthy, I think once again easily said he can be one of the top tier tight ends when he's healthy. It's just that whole key when he's healthy thing, which really sucks because I really like Tyler Eifert a lot. But then we go down to the wide receivers. Now they got Laviska Shenault in the draft. Where's he at? I just seen him. So they got Shenault in the draft, which was a guy that I personally felt like should have been like a Raven. But I think he's a really tough wide receiver and a guy that I didn't think he got enough credit coming out. So I feel like the Jaguars easily got to steal with him. And then you got Chris Conley, who was I was a big fan of Chris Conley coming out of Georgia. Went to the Chiefs and I lost my mind. But we never really got a chance to truly utilize him like he was meant to be used. And so when he went to Jacksonville last year, I thought him and Nick Foles were going to be a thing. And that kind of fell apart because Nick Foles kind of got hurt week 1. So it was kind of sucky there. But then you got D.D. Westbrook and DJ Chark, who are two guys that I feel like DJ Chark obviously showed that he could be that Pro Bowl caliber receiver last year. And then D.D. Westbrook, it sucks because I feel like he was going to be the guy last year. And then Nick Foles goes down. And I think all the reps that they got in practice kind of hurt D.D. Westbrook because he didn't have that repetition with Minshew. And then when Minshew came in, it like him and obviously DJ Chark just kind of took over the game at that point. So from a receiver standpoint or from just a pure pass catcher standpoint, the Jaguars are in perfect position. They're young, they're talented, and I think they have a lot of depth and that's that position. So that's not one position that I personally would worry about if I was in the Jaguars position. And so then we move to the defense line, which looking at what they had up front, bringing in Josh Allen last year, who was an actual game wrecker. If I can go find him. I don't know why. There, okay. So bringing in Josh Allen, sorry. So they brought in Josh Allen last year, and so obviously that was a quality move by them. And then they had Tevin Bryant, who was a guy that I also was pretty interested in. They felt confident enough to bring him in. Now, I don't know where he falls at in this category as far as old regime and new regime, but I like Bryant, and I feel like he can be a good dominant piece in the middle of that defense. And I feel like they feel the same way about him because they've letting a lot go in the middle of that defense. So they clearly see something in Bryant, who is a guy that I'm really interested in. Carl Davis is another guy at the defensive tackle position that I'm really, really excited for because, like, even when he was back in Baltimore, I thought he was still a quality guy or a guy that could show signs of being a decent interior pass rusher. Or not so much pass rusher, but interior presence is the best way to put it. And then you bring in Kayvon Chasen. I think I said that right. So he's another guy that's probably going to just easily be an edge rusher. Let him and Josh Allen just scream up the edges and take care of business. So from a defensive line standpoint, I feel like they have a lot of quality depth and they have a lot of quality play up front as far as just starters. I think linebacker, once again, we can go into the linebacker position. And even looking at the linebackers, I think linebackers is okay. This was for me personally, it was always one of the strongest points of the Jaguars for the longest time. But with the Telvin Smith situation happening, Miles Jack was still there, and Miles Jack I still feel like is a quality linebacker. But with a lot of the stuff that happened with Telvin Smith, I feel like it really hurt them there. And then just like they got a couple of good pieces in place now, but I feel like they just don't have that consistent playmaker there. Not saying Miles Jack isn't, because Miles Jack is a beast. I feel like he's quality, but I don't feel like they have another playmaker at the linebacker position outside of him, where Telvin Smith gave him that and gave him some kind of quality play from that position. And so now you look at their linebacker position as probably one of the more weaker points. Like, I'm not gonna say the weakest, but probably one of the more weaker points. And I think realistically, if we're gonna say if anything's weak on this defense or on this team in general, it would have to be the secondary, which is it's weak because it's unknown. So we got DJ Hayden, who once again was a first-round draft pick. We know that could easily be that guy, but once again, when he's healthy, but he never stays healthy. So if he's on the field, he can easily become that guy. And then we got CJ Henderson, who I was really high on coming out of this year's draft. So it's not that we don't have quality there, we just have a lot of unknown there. So for it to be unknown, it's like a credit score. They say, not having a credit score is just as bad as having a bad credit score. And so right now we don't have no credit score in the secondary, in the Jacksonville Jaguars secondary. So I feel like once we understand or know what we have in the secondary, we can move forward, and hopefully that we know what to fix in the later part, hopefully in the midseason. Maybe we can go pick up Earl Thomas. Maybe. I know that's a long shot, but something that if we're trying to win now, I think. And it's so funny because when I was scrolling through and I was looking for everything, and everyone was talking about tanking for Trevor, and that the Jaguars are 100% on the Trevor Lawrence, and it's like, it makes sense, but it would be really bad if that's the case, because I still feel like this is a competitive roster in a way. Now, granted, they're in the AFC South, which you got Houston and Indianapolis, and Indianapolis is all chips in the middle of the table right now because they got Phillip Rivers. And then you have Houston, who is really trying to find their way and hopefully move things forward. And then you obviously got the Titans, who just competed in the AFC Championship game. So Jacksonville is going to have a competitive roster, but I don't see them winning the South, if that's the thing. Now, with the new playoff format and everything, they might end up breaking into the playoffs, but it's going to be a competitive roster, but they're still going to have a lot of holes. So I don't feel like, with all that being said, I don't feel like that this is a true rebuild. I feel like it's more of a remodel, right? So like a rebuild, you just start from scratch. We need blueprints. We need, this. We don't have any structure. We don't have any framework. At least with the remodel, we have good bones. We have a good structure in place, which I feel like our good structure is our offense and defensive line, and guys like Miles Jack and D.D. Westbrook and, Laviska Shenault and Tyler Eifert, and maybe Minshew really grows into that leadership role. But we have a lot of players in place right now that have the idea of the new culture or the new theme we want to go with as far as what we want our home to look like. So I don't really feel like it's a true rebuild like what we seen Miami go through last year, when Miami was just like wholesaling everything. And even with the New York Giants borderline did a rebuild. I think there was a closer to a rebuild than it was a remodel. Whereas I feel like with the Jaguars, it's more of a remodel, because if Minshew is truly your guy as far as quarterback wise, then you can move forward with him with no problems and no questions asked. And, you can really plug in other pieces. And really offensively, like I said, they're not hurting at really any position. I mean, now you can make a case for running back if if Armstead doesn't turn out to be anywhere near what we project him to be, or hopefully he could be. But wide receiver wise, your quality. Tyler Eifert is going to give you the decent pass catcher at the tight end position when he's healthy. And you got guys like James O'Shaughnessy as well. You have pass catchers. Offensively, it's not my issue. It's really the linebacker and the secondary. And really, and me personally, and I know if you're a Jaguars fan watching this, you're like, oh, Mike, they got this, and this. But that's fine. But I feel like it's a lot of unknown. Whereas in years past, where, this team that was competing in the AFC Championship game, we had A.J. Boye, we had Jalen Ramsey, you had Telvin Smith, you had Miles Jack, you had Calais Campbell. You had people that were, focal points of this team, whereas now I wouldn't say, I guess the team isn't truly going through a rebuild or a remodel. It's more or less the defense is going through a remodel, because that's where a lot of their star power was for the longest time. And now they got rid of pretty much everything that was on that defense and scrapped it and started from the beginning. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the defense look like, more or less. The offense I wouldn't be concerned about too much because of what the offensive line looks like and what the pass catchers look like. It's more or less the development of Gardner Minshew, what we're going to be paying attention to. And eventually, if it gets to the point, it's going to be even more interesting. We're in week 8, week 9, week 10, and the Jaguars are just floating on that line, flirting with the line of the top 5 pick or whatever. Do we start kind of sliding some games just to go get Trevor? I mean, obviously these are professional athletes and they're not going to do that, but it just kind of puts that question out there, like, hey, we can go get Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence next year and really just sit back and wait. And so it's like, or even, I'm not sure if he's even going to be able to come out, but I think he might be Trey Lance. So it's like, there's going to be some quarterbacks, like, if we project these guys to come out next year and they do, then what do we do then at that point? So it's going so many questions surrounding this team. This is the stuff I like to talk about, and this is how I like to talk about it. Like, the Fournette releasing sucked hardcore for Fournette. Hopefully he definitely finds a team where, like I said, can utilize his talents to the best of their abilities and best of his abilities. But the remodeling of the Jacksonville Jaguars is something that now I'm going to be watching the whole entire NFL season, because this is going to be my team that now I'm going to be like, where's this team going to go, and how they're going to navigate, and how they're going to install this new culture and this new attitude that they're trying to install, the Jaguar way football, if you will. And so that's all I have for you guys in this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you're not a footballologist yet, I don't know what you're waiting on. Hit the subscribe button today. Become a footballologist. And stay safe, football fans.